This next rabble-rouser, if I could use the term so rigidly, is a longtime friend of mine. And when I mean friend, you guys, I mean somebody that has taken the time to be able to get to know me and teach me things that I needed to know when I knew so much less than he did. He's been tireless in his efforts around the state. He focuses on the wasteful spending of our state government. He writes, wow, that's beautiful. He writes the pork report where he exposes all of the misappropriations and abusive spending. But he's been a friend of mine because he calls me once in a while. He asks me how I'm doing. He invites me places where I'm actually surprised. And he's just been a good friend. He hasn't just been a good friend to me, he's been a good friend to the people of Idaho. If you've never had the opportunity to meet Mr. Wayne Hoffman, you need to do that. And we should be thankful for the work that he's done in fighting the government for 25 years and bringing awareness to very things that brought us here today. If you don't know, Idaho Freedom Foundation is, I think that's 12 or 17 years old. I'll say 17 because it seems like that. They are a free market think tank, and they're supported by donations and by freedom-loving Idahoans. So if you feel in your heart that you want to be able to support something like that, then I would encourage you to talk to Wayne after he's done speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Wayne Hoffman.
Thanks, Tom. Oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by wonderful people who are tirelessly fighting every day for freedom and liberty, and I feel kind of diminished by that. Can you guys hear me okay? You're good? Cannot hear me. Closer? Like this? Farther away? Like that? All right, good. Okay, so before I begin, I just have to give another shout out. I know you've already applauded her twice, but my gosh, Janice McGeehan is the best lieutenant governor this state has ever had. I study history, so I feel like I'm qualified to say that. Well, as I asked Tom to mention the fact that we're funded by Idaho donors, just because I keep reading in the newspaper that I keep getting money from somewhere back east, and the Koch brothers have an ATM machine in my office. None of that is true. We're supported by Idahoans just like you, who are concerned about not only the future of our state, but also the future of our country. And we believe Idaho ought to be a place where we lead out with solutions, conservative solutions, those same solutions that shouldn't be foreign to our country, but they are. They're the things that made our country powerful and great in the world, and we're just trying to get back to that. We've been fighting socialism, and we've also been trying to make government a little bit more transparent, and the reason that we do that is because I found after 25 years of working in public policy that your legislators often lie to you about what they're doing in Boise. They'll say things like, well, I'm fighting for limited government, and I'm casting conservative votes, but they're not. So several years ago, we created this thing called the Idaho Freedom Index. And the Idaho Freedom Index simply looks at every single bill and determines whether it grows government or shrinks government. That's it. Our policy analysts look through hundreds of bills every single legislative session. They do a really good job. And legislators and their constituents can see in real time whether they're growing or shrinking government. So I ask you to take a look at that webpage and keep it in mind and talk to your legislators and ask them why they scored poorly on the index, especially the legislators from around here. Or if you see your legislator on there and they are doing a good job, tell them, thank you for supporting limited government. But they need to hear, and in fact, I was having a conversation the other day with some Republican friends of mine. They said, Wayne, you're making our jobs harder. I said, why is that? And they said, well, people are looking at their freedom index for our legislative candidates and deciding they can't support them. Well, that's not my problem. That's a you problem, I think. I mean, the fact is, you have Republicans in the Idaho legislature who are voting 90% with the most liberal Democrats in the legislature. That's a problem. Folks, if you're looking for Washington, D.C. to solve problems, and you think to yourself, well, if only we have Trump as the president and a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House, I know what Republican control of all three bodies looks like, and it hasn't been fantastic. There's a reason why the government of the state of Idaho has been able to use these raw powers to shut down businesses and order you to wear masks. And that's because the Republican legislature passed a law that allowed them to do it. So we have some work to do. But, you know, I was thinking a lot about the title of this program, and that's what I want to basically get back to, because part of the work that we have ahead of us is monumental. Freedom is the cure. My friend Ralph Smead would say, freedom from what? And he followed up with freedom from government, because government is the thing that has the power to keep you down. It has the power to prevent you from earning a living. It has the power to take money out of your pocket. It has the power to deny you your pursuit of happiness and your ability to enjoy property. And even in Idaho, that's the case. So if freedom is if freedom is the cure, you know, I would ask you, what is the disease? I go to a wellness specialist in Boise, and he says, you know, the problem with the medical establishment is when you show up at your doctor's office, they'll hand you a pill. Well, a pill's really good at ameliorating whatever the symptoms are, but doesn't really solve the problem. So you got to solve the problem. What is the problem? What is freedom curing or trying to cure? Well, I think it's trying to solve the problem that we see all around us whenever Antifa and I was going to say the Bureau of Land Management, because every time I see BLM, I think Bureau of Land Management. Every time the Black Lives Matter crowd gets together, and what do you see about those people? Number one, they're either employed by the government education system, or number two, they're a product of the government education system. Many of them are between the ages of 17 and 25. So what are they doing? They're regurgitating exactly what we taught them in the public school system. Our kids are taught to hate capitalism. They're told that socialism is good, that communism hasn't worked simply because it hasn't been done well. Well, that's kind of a problem. There are actually, and that's on my website, idahofreedom.org, you can see where people in the school system read textbooks. These little kids are reading these words where it says socialism is just a means to make up for the inequities caused by capitalism. And FDR is a president who modernized our government system and gave us great programs like the ones they have in Europe. All this is a problem. So our kids are trapped, and they're learning quite effectively what the government wants them to learn, and also what they don't want them to learn. So ask your local public school kid about the Constitution. And maybe if you're lucky, they'll recite the preamble because they're taught to remember the preamble. But they don't know why we have a Constitution and what it means and what it's designed to protect us from. This is a problem. And even in Idaho, it's a problem. These young folks then grow up, and they raise kids who send them to the public school system. And increasingly, they become more indoctrinated and more indoctrinated to the point where they don't even recognize what it is they're learning. Worse, these young grown-ups run for office. They become Republican legislators. And then they complain that their Freedom Index score is so low, when actually they're really conservatives. So think about that. This is a problem that we can cure, however. Freedom is the cure. I have had a lot of fun talking to people about the way in which our government education system operates and getting people to recognize that it's even a government education system. They go, oh, I didn't even consider them to be government, for crying out loud. They have a baseball team or a football team. Yeah, they're literally a taxing district with a ball team that you paid for. Congratulations for that. Listen, the public school system is no different than any other government agency. Ronald Reagan said if the government doesn't solve the problem, it is the problem. Milton Friedman said if you put the government in charge of the Sahara Desert, it would be out of sand in 5 years. What do we expect to happen with our kids in the government-run education system? So we need to do something about that, and I'm going to say something that's radical, but I want you to give it some thought. Please, government should not be in the business of educating our kids. Many years ago, some politicians started a movement to get government into the education system. It was forward thinking for them, they thought. They would take people and put them in a building and they learned stuff. They learned to read and write and do arithmetic. Now they're learning way more than that, and a lot of it has nothing to do with really reading, writing, arithmetic. They're learning how to be socialists. They're learning how to hate the very things that made our country great. We've put in place an entire education standard system, Common Core, to further indoctrinate our children. We've been doing that here in Idaho for the last 10 years. What I'm suggesting is we gotta get the government out of the education system. Unfortunately, the one good thing about all this COVID-19 hubbub is that it taught parents who the parents who couldn't send their kids to the public school system anymore realized they had to do something crazy like educate and feed their kids. Wow, that's shocking. And next they're gonna tell them to put clothes on them. But having to do that taught a lot of parents that they're perfectly capable of doing it. And you know what? They even enjoyed it. And the folks who didn't got help, and they learned to meet their neighbors and figure out where their support systems were in their community. It was a beautiful thing. And we should continue that. Right now, there's a question, will our schools open this fall? And my answer is, don't really care. Don't really care. Here's what we need to do. We need to let the parents decide whether to send their kids to school or not. If they're afraid of the coronavirus and they want to wear masks all day, that's the decision that parents get to make. But the school district shouldn't be making that decision unilaterally. And the folks who don't want to do that should be free to get their money back and teach schools at home or in a co-op or in a charter school or in a private school or anything else but the public school system. But in the meantime, we do have other work to do. We've also had this problem in our higher education system. I just wrote a piece about a month ago about how the University of Idaho, paid for by you and by students who attend there, including my son, that the University of Idaho actually has a Black Lives Matter resource page on its website where you can learn about all the socialists and Marxists who are behind the Black Lives Matter platform. It's a real problem. Fortunately, last legislative session, for the first time in decades, the legislature decided to take action and rein in the higher education system just a little bit. They said, listen, you got to get back to your core mission. You can't have an LGBTQ office on the campus of University of Idaho. I'm not making that up. You can't have classes that teach white fragility on the campus of Boise State University. I'm not making that up either. Or tunnels of oppression, or black graduation and rainbow graduation. We need to have your university systems get back to the core mission. And so they instructed them, get back to the core mission, get rid of the administrative bloat, and let us know in January what you did to achieve that goal. Now we'll see what happens, but the point is finally, there are folks in the legislature who are taking this problem serious. They're doing something about it. They're actually taking the time to learn about how our higher education systems have all been teaching indoctrinating principles over the last many decades. And that's part of the reason why we have this problem that you're trying to cure. All this to say that there are a lot of people who are counting on somebody else to come and ride to the rescue to fix our country. That we go to these rallies, and maybe if we rally enough, some politician's gonna come racing to our rescue. Folks, that's not gonna happen. One of the things that I learned from this coronavirus thing is if we don't talk about what public policies we want implemented, they just won't happen. We have got to change it from externally. We've got to apply pressure on the politicians such that they're afraid to leave their houses because somebody's gonna say to them, what are you doing to get my kids out of the government education system? That's what you need. You have got to be the army, the force, the revolutionary warriors that we've been waiting for. If you leave this park and all you do is go home and wait for the next rally or the next protest or the next petition, we will not win. We'll only win if we all get together and say, let's go and apply the remedy, the cure, freedom where it is needed most. And that is in this one government entity that has been kept and held harmless throughout the last many decades, that has got us to this point, that gave us the New Deal, that gave us Great Society, that gave us the Green New Deal, that's going to give us whatever the next liberal administration wants to give us. And that's the government school system. We have got to take action right away. So I'm asking you, please talk to your legislators. Talk to your legislators about getting kids unenrolled from the government school system, about freeing parents and teachers, by the way, because there are plenty of teachers who aren't satisfied either with what's going on. But we have got to do something, because Thomas Sowell said that if you don't have a society that believes in hard work, skills, and savings, you lose your country. Thomas Sowell said that because he was concerned about the direction our country was going. And it's been many years since he said those things. But look at our country now. We have a society that doesn't believe in hard work, that doesn't believe in saving, that doesn't acquire skills. And our country is in a lot of trouble. And all of this can be traced back to the education system. And that is what the Freedom Foundation is going to be working tirelessly over the next several years to try to fix. And hopefully it'll take less time than that. Just one more thought. Since you guys are part of the solution, the cure, if you will, talk to your friends and neighbors. Get them engaged. Some of them are just thinking about this stuff and they're just figuring it out for the first time, and they just need to know there's somebody out there who thinks like them, who wonders why a guy they never heard of 4 months ago can order them to wear masks. Now he wants us to wear goggles. There are people who are saying, now wait a minute, how can masks be a cure when you told me that masks weren't a cure? You're not very consistent. And on and on and on. The point is, people are starting to question their very reality. And you might be just the thing that you're part of the cure. You're part of the people who can help us get the answer that we've been looking for, which is to make freedom front and center in our society, not just a sideline, not just an afterthought, not just something that people forgot to teach about in our government education system. I'm grateful for your time and attention. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.